Welcome everyone to the Building Bridges Initiative overview around residential best practices. Today's session is going to be around some background about Building Bridges Initiative, and we're going to also be focusing on youth-guided care as a critical component of residential best practice. My name is Mark Nickell. I'm the Executive Director of the Building Bridges Initiative. And prior to that, I was a regional executive director with a nonprofit organization, child serving organization in the Bay Area of California. And with me is my colleague, Laura Tate, who is a youth advocate with Building Bridges Initiative. She's been a founding member of the Youth Advisory Board with Seneca Family of Agencies, and has been a critical leader and a critical voice as a national trainer in best practices for youth and families. So I'll turn it over to Laura if there's anything I missed.
No, that's about it. I'm Laura Tate, and I'm everything you said I was.
And more, and so much more.
Right. Yes.
Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Building Bridges Initiative, we did want to talk a little bit about our mission and sort of start there. That, you know, our main goal is to promote practices and policy initiatives that are going to lead to better outcomes for youth and families. We do that through coordinating partnerships and collaborations between families and youth, and then community and residentially based service providers. Also within advocates and policymakers on a state and federal level and local level as well. You're going to hear a lot more about this from us throughout this presentation, but some core components within our mission are that we're really trying to create family-driven and youth-guided care. And our session this morning is going to talk a lot about that in depth. Strength-based and cultural and linguistic competence is a critical component, as well as is delivering individualized and evidence and practice informed service arrays. And we try and do all of this by being consistent with the research on what leads to better outcomes for youth and families. So here's a picture of sort of the core principles. There's sort of 5 core components to what we train on and what we have learned over the years that we've been doing this work with residential service providers. At the top of the list, family-driven and youth-guided care. As I said, you'll hear a lot more about that from us in a bit. Cultural and linguistic competence are critical components, and I know that folks have been hearing a lot more about this, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within our field over the last 5 years. But this has been a critical component that we've identified from the onset of our work. And then following that, clinical excellence and quality standards are critical components that we spoke to that in the mission around developing evidence-based, evidence-informed, and promising practices within our service arrays. And we definitely see that as a critical component to better outcomes. And then later on, you'll hear from us around aftercare strategies. Not in this session today, but in future sessions. Critical components of solid aftercare includes accessibility and community involvement. So making sure that youth and families have accessibility to our services, as well as accessibility to the right level of service at the right time, when and where they need it most. And that involves the final core principle, which is really robust transition planning and services. So really thinking about what will the youth and family need once this particular intervention is complete, in order to maintain success and sustainability over time. So that's a bit about our core principles. We're going to move into Families First just briefly. I think many, if not most of y'all, are familiar with the Family First Prevention Services Act. This was passed in February of 2018. And it got bipartisan support, and for our purposes, 2 of the critical components that we'll be talking a lot with y'all about include family engagement as a mandate, family involvement and services, and then also supports for aftercare. So after the completion of services, are families and youth still getting the level of support that they need when and where they need it most? So that's a really critical piece of legislation that we've learned lately. But prior to the legislation even passing, we've worked on this for you know, a long time with agencies across the country. And what we've learned from residential specific research is that you're going to get improved outcomes with three core focuses. The first is shortening lengths of stay. We've learned a lot about youth who are in facilities or in residential programs for many, many months, if not years. And what we know now is that the longer a youth stays in a facility, usually the poorer the outcome that happens. And Laura's going to talk a bit about her experience with that. And I don't know if you wanted to add anything in terms of length of stay, Laura, just now before we get to your piece later, but just if you had any input on that piece.
Just that, like you said, it does actually affect us. I know when I was in a group home, I was one of the longest kids that was there because I didn't have a home to go to afterwards. So my length of stay was kind of like we don't really know when she's leaving. So it did affect my behavior, how I interacted with staff, the other kids in the house, how I felt about myself. It all played a factor into the direction of where I was going.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to the second bullet there, which is increased family involvement. We know now that you're going to get better outcomes and more sustainable outcomes the better that we get at involving family from the onset of services. And as Laura was pointing out, you know, one of the big barriers to timely discharge is not knowing where the youth may be able to go. And so there's a whole host of interventions around family finding and family engagement. And you'll hear more about that from us in other sessions and just how critical that work is. But what we know now is that we have to shift out of that focus of a youth going into a residential program to get fixed or get better, and I'm doing the quotes, but and then they can return home. But we understand that, you know, in parity with other treatment models, usually when you go in for help, that's usually when family involvement intensifies, and we want to mimic that same dynamic within residential interventions for youth in our space. And then the third and critical component, and we won't get into this so much this morning, or today, but eventually it'll definitely be a piece of what we talk about, is stability and support in the post-residential environment. So we can get really good at helping youth while they're in our care, but if we're not helping translate and transmit what we've learned back home, back into the communities where they're returning, and help train and support the adults in their life who are going to be picking up, you know, the work and carrying it forward, the gains that they make while they're with us won't last. And so that's a really critical component, and it's often you'll hear it phrased as aftercare. But those are really three important elements, critical elements that we've learned over the years are important to have within your program array, service array. So BBI, you know, in our work with residential providers and residential leaders and residential visionaries across the country, have developed a joint resolution. I won't go into the entire thing. You can read it on our website, which is down there on that slide, Building Bridges for Youth. But one of the things that we did want to focus on is that we have a commitment in there to eliminate coercion and coercive interventions. So we talk about it as replacing coercive interventions now. You can't really take away an intervention that folks are used to using without offering a better solution to maintain safety and well-being on the part of the youth and the families and also the staff that are delivering those interventions. But we are aiming toward replacing coercive and interventions with more trauma-informed and trauma-responsive interventions. So eliminating seclusion and restraint and other aversive practices is a core piece of our joint resolution. And there's another host of trainings that we'll be working toward on that with folks as needed. We create partnerships. That's part of our mission. We also have many partners, and we're in a network of national leaders from all over the country, some of which you'll see on this page here, just in terms of other like-minded organizations that are doing similar work in this space and have been critical partners for us and what we've learned and how we've delivered our technical assistance. Here's some of the things that we've been doing over the last 17, 18 years. We've got comprehensive state initiatives. So past work in Delaware, Indiana, and Massachusetts and California. But we also have state level activities. So we've worked in the states you can see up there. Currently, we've got projects in Kentucky and Louisiana, as y'all know, and Michigan, also North Carolina, New Mexico, at the time of this recording, New York, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas as well. We also have city and county level initiatives. So we worked in Monroe, Westchester, and New York, Maricopa, and county in Arizona. Currently, we're partnering with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, child welfare and behavioral health, including a cluster of 6 counties in the northeast part of that state. And we're also underway with a partnership with Red Horowitz Foundation with some organizations in upstate New York. So a lot of different expertise from a lot of corners of the country, and we hope to be training a lot, but also we've learned a lot from regional leadership and visionaries in our work over the years. We did want to just point out that we have a website, and it's has just a tremendous amount of resources that are open to anyone. If you want to just visit the website and sort of peruse what some of those concept papers are, tip sheets. Certainly, we've got a bunch of guides, practice guides on there that have been developed that really drill down into concrete strategies of implementing the principles that we're talking about this morning. And you can find that at our website, Building Bridges, the number 4 youth.org. Couple that I would want to highlight. One is the implementing effective short-term residential interventions. This has been a tremendous offering. It was supported by the Annie E. Casey Foundation in terms of its publishing, and it really breaks down a lot of the concepts. So those elements that we talked about, those core principles, there's different chapters on how you do those in an effective way, in a with really concrete examples from agencies that are implementing this framework all over the country. So that's something that you can get. The PDF of that document is also on our website. So again, I keep plugging the website, but there's some other documents that are on there that we would want to make sure that y'all are familiar with. Successfully engaging families formed by adoption. This is really aimed at strategies for residential leaders within the space. There's also a paper, an informational document on permanency practices and how to collaborate and how to have collaborative strategies with child welfare and between child welfare and residential programs. There's a case study actually on the organization that Laura's a leader with, the Seneca Family of Agencies, called Leading Innovation Outside the Comfort Zone. It really tells the story of their transformation from an exclusively residential facility or residential program to a program that has multiple services across a continuum of care, where now residential is a very small piece of their footprint and usually related to sort of crisis stabilization. Very short-term, 30, 60, 90-day stays when needed. But the lion's share of what they're doing is both community and educationally based services now. So really they move the needle toward prevention and early intervention. And then the last paper, and one that I'm really proud of that we just released, is Beyond Cultural and Linguistic Competence, Achieving Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Leaders of Color. One of the critical leadership groups that we have within Building Bridges Initiative is our Leaders of Color Initiative. And that's comprised of leaders of color from agencies and organizations and jurisdictions from all over the country, really talking about the unique challenges of being in this space in our field as a leader of color in particular. And this is their offering to the field in terms of things to be thinking through as you move towards a diverse and equitable and inclusive organization. So there's a couple of books I just would want to highlight, and proceeds to these go toward different charitable organizations. So this is really just to make sure that y'all are aware of them. And there's also discount codes on these pages here. If you order them online, you can use those discount codes to get a little bit off. But these are sort of, this gives the architecture for the framework that we train on in terms of those core principles. And this one was published, I believe, in 2003 but this was our first, no, excuse me, 2014. But this was our first book on residential interventions for children, adolescents, and families. And it really is a practice guide, so it gives a lot of practical strategies. The one that just came out is sort of the next phase of what we've learned since 2014. And this is practical strategies and future directions, but it builds on the first book, but you know, there's a lot more new information that we've learned over the last 6 years. So also a discount code there. So just wanted to highlight those as resources for y'all. I'm about to turn it over to Laura, who's going to talk a bit about really critical components of youth guided care before we wrap up.
Okay, good. Nice to greet you all. I'm Laura Tate. As Mark previously told you guys, I've actually been in the foster care system since I was 2 years old. So everything I say, I actually know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been through a lot of different group homes, and let's just say it was a tough road. And I'm gonna break down the reasons why, what could have been better, how things could have gone better. And for one, my voice wasn't included. It was more so like I was left at a doorstep, and this is just where I lay my head every night now. There's 7 people. I get night staff, day staff. No one really asked me or let me know what the plan for myself was. I just knew that going back to the home that I was raised in was not the option. And so as I watched other kids go off to either home visits or have families come and see them at our group home, even a few times people's parents had came and had dinner with us at our dinner times. And for me, that was it really left me feeling really lonely and even more abandoned than I already felt, because I really had nobody. There was talks of, okay, well, you're only allowed to be here for a select amount of time, and everybody's having plans. But again, no one's coming and telling me what my plan is, so that leads me to feel like I need to find a plan on my own. And I had no job. I was only 14, maybe, if I'm correct. So I didn't really know the direction of what I was going to do. Watching kids hang out with their families really made me sad. Honestly, it made me sad, and I acted out on those in different ways. I may have felt sad, but on the outside, I acted in anger, because that's just how I knew that's all I knew. And so it didn't take until I had a staff member that was, I guess, want to say my case manager, I guess. That was my go-to point person if I had trouble or problems. But the problem with that was she did not understand me at all. When I was upset and I was asked to be left alone, she did the complete opposite, which only enraged me further. Which, if you can't listen to me or get to know me, then you can't help me. And it made me feel like she wasn't interested in really getting to know me. She was only there for her pay job, which wasn't going to help me succeed or trust or vocalize what I needed and my needs to somebody. And it wasn't until another staff member took it upon herself to get to know me, and how she did that was, bear with me now. You kind of have to think out of the box when you're connecting with the kids. I mean, you can't go by the book answers, because we don't have by the book lives. There's not if this happens, okay, you can flip the page and find the answer for that. That's not how our lives are set up. So some of the things you have to do to connect to these kids are gonna have to be out of the box. What'd she do? We watched a Kevin Hart comedy video. And from then, that was the first time that I was sitting down next to a staff member and was laughing with them instead of cussing them out, which is something that I did very often, believe it or not. And so with that being said, after that, sparked a relationship with me and her. And from then, I started to go with her with my needs and what I wanted. And then we started discussing the fact of, well, I know this child can't be alone in the world. Once it was disclosed that she actually was the one to see that the one family member that everybody knew about was the main abuser in my life. So she spoke up on that and was like, hey, I don't think this is what she needs instead, So when I trusted her enough with her going to bat for my needs and her believing me and realizing that I'm a sweet girl. I'm not the girl they have on paper. Well, technically I was the girl they had on paper, but that was justified reasoning. But with that, through that, I ended up finding 9 of my siblings. I am the youngest of 9 siblings. And through there, I got connections to where when everybody else was upstairs at night sleeping, I was on phone calls with my older sister that I had never met at the time. I hadn't met her yet, but to me, that made me feel I felt just as special as the other kids that had their families coming to see them. I felt just as special, even though it was different, that I was only phone calls, but it was still, I had my own select pinpointed time that, okay, while everybody else is asleep, they may be asleep, but my sister's calling. So I get to get out of bed. I get to come out of my room. I get to bond with my older sister. I even got to go and meet her in San Diego. And from there, that's when things changed for me. And we started thinking about, okay, well, where is she going next? And let's try and find these family connections. That way, when she does leave, she's not all on her own. And she's not all by herself. And that made me feel as if I was wanted, I mattered, and my existence was worth something. Let's see. Did I touch enough on the residential part, Mark, or should I
You
go?
did. No, that was beautiful. Yeah, I think shifting into the youth advisory board work you've done is perfect. But that's yeah. Thank you for that.
My baby. Now, youth advisory board is something that one day a very smart man by the name of Mark Nickell decided to realize that he knew a very intelligent young lady by the name of Laura Tate. And I've always been a very outspoken person. I will say what needs to be said, how it needs to be said, so people understand the realness. I don't sugarcoat. I'm very blunt. And he realized, I guess they wanted to know about how their residential was, and they needed more feedback on how their programs were. So he came to the right person. And I told him everything. This was wrong. This could have been better. And with that, it was, oh, well, why don't you come and you tell these other staff members? And why don't you come and meet with other kids? Because, maybe if they don't connect with us, they'll talk to you. And that's most likely what happens. Because it's not that we don't trust y'all, but we don't trust y'all. I'm sorry, but we don't trust y'all. Y'all don't even look trustworthy half the time. And so when they see a person that looks like myself or looks similar to them that they know for sure comes from the same background as them, they're going to be more likely to come to me and say, hey, this is what upsets me. I'm sad about this. Or also it just gives them a piece of comfort seeing where I'm at, the position in my life to where they are. I've had kids that are the same age as me tell me they want to be me when they grow up, which is wild. Because I'm not even fully grown yet. But the youth advisory board, we take youth is from ages, I want to say 13 and up, both former foster care and those that are still involved in foster care. And we do several different things with them. We have YAB talks, which is basically looks like you get a group of like-minded youth together in one room and you talk about any issues, things that are going on in their life, how they connect with their workers, and all of that. Now, not only do we talk with the youth, afterwards we go and if we know of their workers, we can go and be a Lorax for an advocate for the youth and say, okay, for example, Susie told me this is why she does not talk in class. This is exactly why, because the kids are loud and the kids are mean and she doesn't want to get picked on. She may not tell her staff that, but Susie may have told me that because she feels more comfortable with me because she knows that I understand her life. I've been in her shoes. I get it. We speak the same language, so to speak. And that makes it really easier. And also it helps them trust you guys when they see that you guys are on board and in hand working with us. And it lets them trust you guys a lot more and allows them to let you guys help them. So if you guys don't have a youth advisory board in any of your programs, I would definitely say reach out to your past and your former youth that went through you guys' programs, or find the youth that are still in your programs and give them that opportunity to vocalize how they feel, because it'll better them and you guys as a program as well. What else? Any other things I should highlight about the Youth Advisory Board?
No, I think you've got it. So yeah, we can move into the final phase of where you are now within Seneca. And just to clarify that what Laura's referring to is the Youth Advisory Board that she was a founding member of at Seneca Family of Agencies there in California. So yeah, so we'll shift into the last phase, I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
That is, training. Oh my gosh, yes. We have trained staff that are going to be actually in direct one-on-one contact with the youth. We have trained them on how to interact with them, prepared them for what they're going down, for what they may deal with. Okay, because if you can't take the tough love and the tough training I'm giving you in this 1 hour session, this hour and a half, one day, you're not going to be prepared to meet with a kid every week. You're not going to be able to help them. If I scare you, and you're only with me for 30 minutes or an hour and hearing me try and teach you and giving you the real, you're not going to be prepared to efficiently help the kids. So by having us with real life experience, not that you guys didn't learn anything in your colleges where you got your degrees and stuff, they just couldn't teach you what we went through. I can legit put you in my shoes and make you feel the way I feel. And that, in turn, will have you be able to connect with the youth. Within, I want to say, more than the last 5 years, anybody hired at Seneca going to any position, not just those that are coming in contact with direct youth, those that are even just working in the offices at the desk every day, still go through the trainings with the Youth Advisory Board, because at the end of the day, what you're doing on that paperwork is that youth's life on your hands. And so you need to understand just as much as anybody else how they feel and what they're going through. And so by having everybody involved in one of these trainings, interactive trainings with a youth that has lived the life that you guys are trying to help kids out of, you'll see a dramatic change for the better in your program and in the youth that you guys are working with.
Beautifully put, Laura. Thank you so much, as usual. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think, the only thing I would add, and just to highlight, is that what Laura described, it is intentional in terms of the order in which she described it. It starts with listening to youth and building trust and incorporating their own sense of what they need and what's helpful for them into the plans, into the planning decisions, and into the activities that you're doing on their behalf. And that's sometimes where folks are starting. A deepening of youth guided care really does involve creating boards and at Seneca, finding Laura, who has such a powerful voice and is such a critical leader, channeling that into leading not just other youth within the program, but leading staff too, in terms of what youth are needing and what they're experiencing. And then finally, rather than just hearing their input, whether on an individual basis or as a collective, as an advisory board, following their lead. And that's really when you get into levels of having youth involved in interviewing and involved in training.
Yes.
Having them on your board of directors, having youth representation on that level as well. So there's a lot of different strategies and practices that can be employed in terms of implementing youth-guided care, and such a critical component of BBI's framework of what we see actually leads to better outcomes and more sustainable outcomes. And so, we'll finally just leave you with the idea that, families take care of kids best, and you're going to hear this theme again and again from us. And there's an urgency to what we're doing in order to link them, because I think, as Laura talked about, what her experience was, she was in her teens before she realized or found out or was told that she had this huge network of siblings. And there was just, it was just a sense of, we wasted a lot of time that could have been developed in helping her build those connections and build those relationships, which she's going to need for her, the span of her life, like we all do. So anyway, thank you, Laura, so much for your expertise and wisdom and for sharing.
Always, anytime.
Yeah. So we'll leave y'all with that. And again, just as a reminder of the core principles, the family-driven and youth-guided care are one of 5 principles that are really critical to these outcomes improving, and you'll be hearing a lot more from us in the days to come. Here's some contact of our core team. So if you need any more information, you've got mine and others, other of our core team members' contact info on this page here. And thank you all very much for your attention and interest, and look forward to answering any questions that you may have of us on this content. Thank you.